In continuation from the Shabbos Achrei Mosin Kedoshim, in the Sicha of Emor 5751, the Rebbe continues with the theme of inserting the Aleph into the Goyla, creating Geula. And there are actually 2 points in this. The first is the insertion of the Aleph, the bringing the Alufo Shalolam, the Master of the Universe, into the world. And the second point is, through our avodah of doing that in Goyla, in the moments of Golus, we precipitate and we bring out the Geula. So therefore, in order to expand on this theme, the Rebbe rolls out exactly now what our avodah should be on the Erev HaGeula, on the eve of this Geula. We find, in fact, that these 2 points, the insertion of the Aleph into the Goyla, creating Geula, and the avodah in Golus itself, bringing the Geula, we find those reflected in the very first Geula from Mitzrayim. How so? First of all, in addition to the fact that it was a complete Geula in the sense that it was Binareinu Bizkenenu, with our youth, with our elders, Bevanenu Bivnesenu, and with our sons and daughters, and Kaspam Uzahavim Itom, and all their silver and golden possessions. In addition to that, the Torah tells us, Vayashilum Mitzrayim, that the Jews, they requested from the Egyptians vessels to take with them. And in fact, the Talmud points out that it wasn't so much the Jews requesting from the Egyptians, it was the Egyptians sort of pushing on to the Jews all silver and gold in order that they should take it out with them. In other words, the Egyptians themselves aided and abetted the Jews to leave with this tremendous wealth. So we find that the Egyptians themselves, the Goyla itself, helped towards the Geula, and it was this avodah in Mitzrayim that brought out the Geula. The Rebbe points out that this was not only material, but it was also spiritual. In Kabbalah, it is explained that there are 288 rapach, reish peiches, sparks of kedusha, of holiness, that fell down by the breakage of the vessels into the world, and 202 of those sparks were elevated by the exodus from Egypt. In other words, the Jews trawled those 202 sparks out of Egypt when they went out, and not a single spark, if you want, was left. And therefore the redemption of Egypt was not just a redemption from physical bondage, but also it was a spiritual elevation of all the negativity, depravity of Egypt, lifting up the Geula, the Golus of Mitzrayim, and redeeming it. And it was through specifically the descent of the Jews into Egypt and the bondage that thereafter, Yetzu B'Rechush Gadol, they came out with this tremendous wealth, materially and spiritually. However, the Rebbe goes on to ask the following question. In addition to the insertion of the Aleph in the Goyla, creating Geula, in addition to that, what was achieved through the exodus of Egypt was a chain of amazing things, starting off with the revelation on Seder night of Nigla Aleichem Melech Malchei Hamlochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'Ga'olam, a revelation of God himself, not through an emissary, but God himself went out and redeemed them. 49 days later, they stood at Sinai, where Panim B'Panim Dibar Hashem Imohem, God spoke face to face with them. And thereafter, if we want to have a look further into history, that will eventually culminate in the future redemption, at which there will be revelations even higher than there were at Sinai, even higher than there were in Egypt, and Ki Meitzescha Me'eretz Mitzrayim, God, just like in the days of the Exodus of Egypt, Areno Niflois, will show us wonders, greater wonders than we had beforehand. In fact, in Chassidus, that is termed as what would be called the revelation of Atik, the revelation of Keser, the revelation of the highest levels. And all that was and is included in the word Geula. How so? In other words, what the Rebbe is asking is that the Geula of Mitzrayim, which is Goyla plus the Aleph, includes not only the redemption from Egypt, but it also includes all the further elevations and revelations. How is this hinted in the letter Aleph, which is inserted into the word Goyla, creating Geula? That's the question. And the Rebbe answers by giving us three interpretations of the letter Aleph itself. In other words, in that Aleph, which is inserted into the Goyla, there are three interpretations of the Aleph. Number one, Aleph is from the expression Alufa Shalom, the God of the world. Number two, Aleph is from the word Ulpana, learning. A'alefcha Chachma, A'alefcha Bina, the idea of limud. And number three, Aleph is the same letters as the word Pele, which means something wondrous, something which is marvelous, something which is much higher experience than just learning. It's something astonishing. And these are in fact three levels itself in Geula. There is, number one, a Gilui Eloikus, a revelation of godliness in the world. That's the insertion of the Alufa Shalolam, the master of the world, in the world, revealing within Goyla, revealing within the exile, that its true intent is its godly intent. That's one level. The second level is the Aleph from the word Ulpana, meaning learning, which is revealing Torah, which Torah preceded the world. In fact, it says that the Torah preceded the world by 2,000 years, the Alpayim Shana Shekodma Torah La'olam, and these Alpayim is from the word Aleph, is the idea of Chachma and Bina, which came before the Sephiros of Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, etc. Because B'Sheishes Yamim Nivra Ha'olam, the world was created in 6 days. These 6 days refer to the 6 Sephiros of Chesed, which corresponds to Sunday, Gevurah, which corresponds to Monday, Tiferes, Tuesday, etc. However, higher than the Midos is Moichin, is the mind. And that's the Torah, the Chachma, and the Bina, which preceded the world. And then you have an even higher level than Chachma and Bina, and that is the Spira of Keser, of the crown. And that refers to a revelation of godliness which is even higher than that of Torah, and this is called Atik, the highest level of revelation, and Pnimius Atik, the inner dimension of Atik, which is a revelation of the essence of godliness. Now, these three levels are all included in the word Geula, and they all represent our avodah now in the Erev HaGeula, in the eve of the Geula. The first is Aleph, inserting the Aleph in the world. And we do that through fulfilling the verse, B'chol dorochecha deyehu, knowing God in all our ways, and Kol ma'asecha l'shem shamayim, all our deeds being for the sake of heaven, revealing in every echelon of the world, in every aspect of the world, in every experience of daily worldly life, its divine and godly intent. That's the insertion of Aleph into the world. The second is learning Torah. Because when we learn Torah, we're learning divine wisdom, which is higher than the world. That's the second interpretation of the Aleph from the word ulpana. And then, through learning Chassidus, which Chassidus is the pnimius of the Torah, the inner dimension of the Torah, we can access the very essence of godliness, which transcends even the previous two levels. So since the Geula will be precipitated by our actions in Golus, therefore in that Aleph which we insert into the Geula, there must be, in fact, all these three levels itself. Now, since the Geula will come through Mashiach, it makes sense that these three levels are reflected in the persona of Mashiach himself. And this we find that the Rambam describes Mashiach as being mi beis David umizera Shlomo. Mashiach will be a descendant from the house of David and from the seed of Shlomo. Shlomo HaMelech, who was the son of David HaMelech. Why does the Rambam add on this point that he will also be from the seed of Shlomo? After all, Shlomo was the son of David HaMelech. And the answer is that David HaMelech is the idea of Malchus, of kingship. However, in his days, there was much war. Whereas in the days of Shlomo HaMelech, he was the Melech Shahash Shalom Shalom. He was the king in whose days there was peace and tranquility. And in fact, the Shalemus HaMalchus, the complete notion of kingship, was revealed in his days, so that others, in fact, came to him, like the story of Malchut Shva, the Queen of Sheba. So therefore we have this notion that in Mashiach himself, he will reveal Malchus, the kingship of God in the world. The second level of Mashiach is like what we said before, that Aleph is from the word ulpana, teaching. Mashiach, in addition to being a king, will also be a Rav, a teacher. And he will teach us Torah. In fact, it says that he will be a greater Chacham, he will be more wise even than Shlomo HaMelech. And the third level, it says, V'nacha olav ruach Hashem, that upon Mashiach will rest a spirit of God, and he will reveal levels in Torah which have never been revealed. Levels in Torah which are the hidden and most esoteric dimension in Torah, things which have never been revealed, which are astonishingly wondrous, from the word Pele, they will be revealed by Mashiach. So we see that these three interpretations of the Aleph, which are three levels of revelation of godliness, are all also in the persona of Mashiach. Each and every Jew has a spark of Mashiach within them. That means that since Mashiach will be precipitated by the avodah, the service of every single Jew, therefore, in a small dimension, there must be also these three elements within the avodah of every single Jew. This, in fact, is hinted to in the coming, in the Pirkei Avos, in the Perek of the ethics of the fathers in chapter 4. How does the Mishnah start? The Mishnah starts by asking four questions. Ezehu Chacham, who is wise? And then it says, Ezehu Gibor, who is mighty, who is strong? Ezehu Ashir, who is wealthy? Ezehu Mechubad, who is honored? It's known that these four questions correspond to the four letters of Hashem's name and correspond to the sephiras which they represent. So, Ezehu Chacham is the sephira of Chachma. That is the yud of the name Hashem. Ezehu Gibor refers to the sephira of Bina, which is the hey of the name of Hashem. Because Gevuros come from Bina, because Bina is the idea of fleshing out a concept, expanding it in breadth and length, and therefore in order to do that one needs to apply Gevura. Then it says Ezehu Osher, who is wealthy. That is the sephira of Tiferes. It's beautiful, expansive, and that includes all the other midos as well. And then it says, who is Mechubad? This is the concept of Malchus, because Kavod, honor, glory, this relates to Malchus. And in fact, as the sages say elsewhere, Man Malke Rabbanon, who are the kings? These are the sages, because they reflect the Sephira of Malchus. We give honor to them. There is a mitzvah to honor sages and their learnings, because they reflect the Kavod Shemayim, the glory of heaven in this world. So we see that in the first Mishnah of Pirkei Avos, we in fact have all these levels reflected, that every Jew should reflect the three levels of revealing godliness in the world, which is done through inserting the Aleph into Goyla, in all our ways, knowing Him, and all our actions for the sake of heaven. The second level is revealing godliness as it transcends the world, as it's manifest in Torah. And the third level is the idea of revealing the inner dimension of the Torah, which completely transcends the world, but will ultimately reveal the very essence of godliness within the world. This is all emphasized in the time period which we're in, which is the Shabbos after Lag BaOmer. This was how it was in that year in 5751. Because Lag BaOmer celebrates the Yom Hilula, the Yortzeit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who revealed to us the inner dimension of the Torah, and the principal revelation of that inner dimension was on the day of his passing. And consequently, this is why we rejoice, although usually on a Yortzeit it's not a happy occasion, because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai himself instructed that we rejoice on this day because of the tremendous revelation of the inner dimension of the Torah. In fact, it's written by Sifra Dilach that with this book of Zohar, which was written, which recorded his teachings, Yivkun Bei Migalusa Barachmin, the Jews would exit the exile in great mercy. And the idea is Yisparnasun Minei. We will get our spiritual income from this book. And in fact, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai not only revealed the inner dimension of the Torah, but he also joined and fused together both Nigla, the revealed levels of the Torah, and Nister, and the concealed levels of the Torah, which the fusion of those two is rather, like we said beforehand, revealing levels of godliness which transcend the world in the world. That's the idea of seeing Torah as one, its body and soul, its inner and outer dimensions as one being, and seeing them fused together, seeing how within the world we can reveal that which is transcendent of the world. Thereafter this was continued in the days of the Arizal, in whose days it was said that mitzvah galois zois hachachma, that there is a mitzvah in our generations to reveal the esoteric wisdom, and this continued in greater strength with the revelation of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid of Chassidus Haklolis, general Chassidus, and in more detail and focus with the revelation of Chassidus Chabad of the Alter Rebbe, and especially with the instruction that when will Mashiach come, when the well springs of the teachings of Chassidus will be widely disseminated outwards. The chutzah, of course, the outwards beginning in our own soul powers, therefore thereon going into our own animal soul, and thereafter into our portion in the world, and in fact to the wider world. And certainly that is achieved, says the Rebbe, even with greater energy nowadays with the revelation of manuscripts of Chassidus which are being currently printed, which is yet a further step in the dissemination of these teachings. And included in that is also histaklus bifnei harav, looking at the face of the teacher. And when one stares and gazes into the face of the teacher, it gives a person extra understanding and vitality in all areas. And consequently, today, every single Jew has been empowered to be a tzaddik, as we say in Pirkei Avos, ve'amech kulam tzaddikim, all your nation are tzaddikim, because with this tremendous empowerment and outpouring of the inner dimension of the Torah, which reveals the inner level of the soul, every Jew has this capability to rise and transform the Gola, the exile, into Geula and to be a tzaddik. What are the directives of this Sicha practically? Two directives. Number one, that all of us should reveal within the world the Aleph on all of its levels. We need to reveal in the world around us its godly intent. We need to learn Torah in order to bring divinity into the world. And most importantly, number two, we need to study Chassidus. Because by learning Chassidus, we'll be taking the crown jewel, the very essence, into this world and revealing and beginning a process which will culminate by the coming of Mashiach and the building of the third Beis HaMikdash, when the very essence of godliness, as is expressed in the very essence of the teachings of the Torah, will be revealed down here in this world. It should take place very soon with the building of the third temple in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, B'mheira v'yameinu mamash.